Koigar! Greetings, I am Tad Larkin, the lore master of Manda-LORE, and today I'll be digging through the archives to continue elaborating on Operation Skyhook. Following the mission to Denuda that I explained in my last transmission, Kyle Katarn handed off his set of Death Star plans to rebel operatives aboard a captured Lambda-class shuttle. One piece of this grandiose puzzle that made up the Death Star was now in rebel hands. However, far more information was needed before a proper technical analysis could be conducted, and another set of plans did eventually come, this time from an unexpected source. Rebel prisoners of war detained aboard the Death Star itself were incited to riot as a diversion for one of them to sneak in, grab a copy of the plans, and transmit them to a nearby base.
Probably would have jettisoned the whole detention block into space. After the embarrassment of the prison break, Lord Vader removed us from our comfortable belay and began dragging the 501st across the galaxy in a dangerous hunt for the now missing Death Star plans. Ironically, our punishment eventually proved to be our salvation. The poor souls who took our place in the detention area were completely wiped out when the Death Star was destroyed.
As recounted in this interview with an unknown veteran of the 501st, while the riot was successfully put down, a partial encryption was transmitted to a rebel outpost on nearby Polis Massa, and luckily for the 501st, they were soon rotated off the Death Star. The Empire wasted no time in retaliating, and the 501st were quickly dispatched to Polis Massa to take out the rebel cell and recover the stolen plans. The battle started off well for the Empire. That was until, after having fully recovered the plans, it was discovered that the holodisks were actually decoys, and the real plans had already been passed on to rebel agents. The plans recovered during the Death Star riot, though no less helpful, were only partial plans, and mostly structural. However, the last crucial piece of the Death Star puzzle was soon to come into place, from rebel operatives on a backwater world known as Toprawa. Phase 2, the Battle of Toprawa. Utilizing information gathered by Leia Organa at the hands of the late Imperial nobleman Lord Tion, the rebellion discovered that an Imperial convoy would be stopping at the remote research facility on Toprawa to transport crucial plans detailing the Death Star superlaser to Coruscant for archiving. Naturally, it was important that the Alliance gain those plans, and only then would they have enough information to hopefully analyze a weakness in the Death Star and bring about its destruction. Laying in wait for the plans to be transferred and the convoy to get underway, the rebels sprung their ambush, and above Toprawa the Imperials were taken by surprise as Alliance forces struck hard and fast, winning their first major engagement against the Empire. With the plans secured, they were combined with the set of plans recovered from Kyle Katarn on Denuda, as well as the set of plans transferred from Polis Massa, and were now in the hands of Alliance forces on the ground. Determined not to let Toprawa be a repeat of Polis Massa, the Empire reacted swiftly and ruthlessly, declaring Toprawa a restricted zone and blockading the system, effectively trapping Alliance ground forces. Upon hearing the news of the plan's capture and the system's blockade, Bail Organa himself was prepared to board his Corellian Corvette and head to Toprawa to help get the plans off-world, but was persuaded by his adopted daughter, Leia Organa, to let her go in his stead, as he was already under suspicion of being a rebel sympathizer. Back on Toprawa, Alliance forces were to make an effort to capture the Imperial Communications Center within the research facility, and once the designated Alliance vessel came in range, i.e. the Tansu 4, the rebels would send a burst transmission containing the combined plans to be intercepted. The odds were stacked against them, but they were told that their part in this mission was expendable. At the end of the day, though, getting those plans in safe hands was the ultimate objective. While Vermilion, leader of the Toprawan rebel cell, geared up for his assault on the communications center, rebel agent Havit Storm began working his way into the research facility, hacking in and even dressing as an Imperial officer. After making his way through the facility and drugging the chief facility officer, Storm obtained the third and final set of plans, and with the entirety of the Death Star schematics in hand, he then proceeded to copy them onto a set of disks. Meanwhile, Alliance forces fought their way into the research facility, bursting through the defenses and penetrating into the communications center, while Commander Bria Theron and the famous Red Hand Squadron maintained their position outside the communications center, fending off waves of Imperial troops. Inside the comm center, Vermilion and his squad of specialists and technicians met up with Haven Storm, and together they attempted to make their way to the main console, not before being ambushed in a corridor by a squad of stormtroopers. Though the stormtroopers were subdued, Vermilion suffered mortal wounds, and with his dying breath, he gave Storm the frequency and passcode in which to transmit the plans. Skyhook. Now it was time to play the waiting game as rebels dug in and prepared to hold the comm center for as long as possible. Above T'Prawa, feigning hyperdrive problems, the Tantive 4 dropped out of hyperspace, and utilizing Leia's diplomatic immunity to her full extent, R2-D2 pretended to make repairs on the ship's exterior as Imperials questioned them intensely on their purpose in the system. Wasting no time, Storm sent out the encoded transmission. However, it didn't go undetected, and Captain Praji of the Star Destroyer Devastator grew increasingly suspicious of the Corellian corvette, and as the Tantive 4 began to make the jump to hyperspace, the Devastator opened fire and began pursuit. The culmination of 2 years' worth of covert operations and the only hope for the Rebel Alliance had finally been passed on. It was now up to Leia Organa to ensure that the Death Star plans got into the right hands. As for Haven Storm, Bria Theron, Red Hand Squadron, and the rest of the T'Prawan rebels, they made a heroic last stand at the Imperial Research Facility, as scores of Imperial troops overwhelmed the beleaguered rebels. The members of Red Hand Squadron who weren't cut down by enemy fire swallowed suicide capsules, and Commander Bria Theron followed suit, recognizing that neither her or her troops could be captured alive if the secrecy of Operation Skyhook were to be kept safe. Out of all the brave heroes on T'Prawa, only Haven Storm made it out alive, and while the Death Star plans were now complete and in the capable hands of Leia Organa, her ship was now being chased through the Tatooine system by the ruthless Darth Vader. I would further elaborate on this subject, however, we all know the story of what happens after, as Operation Skyhook would achieve success when the Death Star was destroyed by a farm boy recruit from Tatooine, with help from his smuggler friends, and a mystic power known as the Force. This transmission was suggested by Jan Witowski. If you have any suggestions for future transmissions, don't be afraid to drop a comment. In the meantime, keep your comm channels open for future transmissions, and don't forget to subscribe. Tad Larkin, out.